UNAWA is a legal and regulatory tech startup offering ease of doing business at the fingertips for every Filipino company. Attorney Gino Jacinto is the Chief Operating Officer at UNAWA. So hello, Attorney Gino. We're very happy to have you dito sa podcast. And we're very fortunate to get to know more about UNAWA.
Hi, Johnny. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me here. It's truly a pleasure.
Yeah, so we want to know more about UNAWA, it being a legal and regulatory tech startup. It's actually the first type of the startup we have here in the podcast. So let's start with the question. Ano nga ba ang UNAWA, Atty. Gino?
Well, as you said, UNAWA is a regulatory and legal tech startup. Our goal is very simple. We are here trying to create products that digitize the workflow of the Philippine economy, hoping to modernize the way the Filipino does business. Very simple, but ultimately it's quite a big task. But It's a task we are definitely up for.
Yeah, it's the keyword, no, the digitization, especially now, no, we're in the digital industry, we're in that kumbaga era na kumbaga lahat ng mga traditional operations na ginagawa dati ay maybe pwedeng i-turn na into digital transactions. But maybe we can know more about you, no, Atty. Gino, maybe a bit of your backstory. Kasi UNAWA nga is a legal and regtech startup. So maybe can we know lang, no, some backstories of how and maybe why you joined UNAWA? Maybe you can know more about the stories behind you joining this legal and regulatory tech startup.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't really normally talk about myself, no. So where to begin? So yeah, I am a lawyer. I graduated from Ateneo in 2010, and I joined the bar 2011. Just like most of us, I started my career in litigation and corporate work. So I jumped around from firm to firm. I worked with two firms before I moved to the corporate world, where I was tasked to be the head of legal of a multinational company located here in the Philippines. So quite a big operation. And then eventually I joined another startup, which I founded with my friends actually. Quite opposite to what I used to do, not necessarily legal, but that was my first endeavor into the tech space, right? So I was the acting chief legal officer of the company. So I still honed my career in law through it, but my exposure to the legalities of the technical industry and the tech space, particularly the startup field, started there. That was about 2016. And ever since then, I was focused on really on tech and on startups, whether it be consulting or actually being a part of it. And then one day, my CV dropped on the lap of UNAWA with attorney Regina Jacinto Barrientos, which no relation, by the way. Attorney Regina Jacinto Barrientos is the managing partner and CEO of PJS Law, one of the biggest law firms of our country. So when I got a message from her that she wanted to interview me, I was quite taken aback because, as I mentioned, I've already left the litigation space. Was no longer interested in going to court and then litigating. However, when PJS calls, you answer. So I took the interview. There was a bit of a miscommunication. She was calling me for the role pala of COO of UNAWA. So she found that my tech experience and the fact that I'm also a lawyer might have been a perfect fit for the role they were looking for. And I'd like to think that I hope they think they found the perfect candidate for that role.
Yeah, it's kind of a fortunate story, no, na parang you thought that it was for PJS Law, and then it's apparently for the startup. And apparently, kumbaga, since you have background nga in tech, you have background in that kind of work, so parang nag-join lang coincidentally yung event.
Yeah, it was definitely a perfect match for me. It was something that really fell in my lap. That was really like in the wheelhouse I was looking for. It's very hard to find something in tech and the legal space the way I wanted it. It's easy to be a lawyer in a startup. Every startup needs a lawyer, but to be a lawyer at a legal startup is to be a part of a legal startup as a lawyer rather is something quite unique, and I'm very fortunate to be in this position.
Yes, and although now, no, your position is Chief Operating Officer at UNAWA. So can we know more lang, like how did you transition to being a Chief Legal Officer, like that kind of knowledge to doing maybe the operations nga now at UNAWA? So parang, how did your expertise really go into being the COO?
Wow, that's quite a difficult question. The legalities is not really a day-to-day thing in a company, I would say. I'm sure a lot of your viewers, particularly some corporate lawyers, might disagree with me, and I apologize to them if that's the case. But I found myself doing, for the startups particularly, work was either intensive for a few months, and then it would slow down. It would be very seasonal, depending on what we were doing, depending if we were fundraising, if it was that time of year, or contract negotiations. But there are times there will be a lot. So obviously, back in my chief legal officer days in another company, I would also participate and see how operations would go. And I learned from that, and then that's how what I applied to UNAWA. So I combined the two to really to fill this position to the best of my ability.
Yeah, and it's true. No, actually, start being in a startup. Actually, it's a very dynamic environment. Maybe this month, next month. Even if you're a CLO or a COO, pa iba-iba pa rin yung task, and you get to
Everything.
learn.
Pwede ka bang maging messenger, pwede ka maging um, what do you call salesman, everything.
Yeah.
We in a startup, especially at Onawa, we have a very good team. Everyone helps each other. There's no hierarchy. There's no parang chain of command in that sense. We like to create we foster an environment and culture that's very open and very accommodating to everyone. So in our little space, at least, we make it so that anyone can approach me at any time for anything. They don't have to go to their supervisor. We try to create that environment, and that's something I learned from being an employee back in the day myself. And the things I didn't particularly like about my prior supervisors, I try not to emulate with my team.
Yeah, and actually, I think that's one of the unique things about startups. No, the lack of hierarchy, maybe. If like that kind of culture, because it allows the startup to be dynamic, not to be flexible din and to be agile. Let's go naman no sa ginagawa ni Unawa, especially for our Philippine
Sure.
SMEs. I think that's the main kumbaga value proposition, or kumbaga the main business basically of Unawa. The tagline actually is ease of doing business at your fingertips for every Filipino company. Now, before I ask, how do you offer or how do you provide ease of doing business? Maybe let's go muna dun sa may parang, bakit nga ba mahirap gumawa ng business in the first place, especially in the Philippines? So parang ano ba yung like barriers or pain points maybe for SMEs or for any Philippine or for any business that wants to start here in the Philippines?
Well, I can't speak to this as if I know every aspect of every business, okay? But for the most part, a lot of it has to do with the regulatory compliances, with the filing of paperwork, getting the necessary signatures, cascading and disseminating these papers, getting it to the right people, the delivery, the coordination. That alone takes some time, no? So the printing, the filing, and all of that takes a few days already. And we already have many anti-red tape matters in place, but it still slows things down because of the inherent nature of the way we do things. And the inherent nature of the way we do things is still very manual in the sense that we are still using paper. As you said earlier, we're in a digital economy now. We're digitizing everything. I mean, look at us. We're conducting an interview. I don't even know where you are, Johnny, actually.
Actually, I'm in Taiwan right now, so I'm not in the Philippines,
Oh,
but
well,
we can
see?
do this kind of
Oh, wow.
conversation.
See, can you imagine? A few years ago, if we were to do this interview, I would have to go
Yes.
to a studio. It would have been nice to meet you in person, obviously, but I would have to have most likely dedicated my entire day just for a 40-minute interview. So you can see what the digitization and what technology has done to help streamline some processes from your podcast to our business. And what we do in Unawa is it's not it's in the bottom level, in the back end, it's very high tech. The technologies and the things that go on behind there is sometimes even too much for me to understand. But I'm very lucky to have a wonderful CTO, the best team of developers I could possibly put together. I have, so I am blessed to have that level of team. But to go back to your question, what we try to do is try to simplify matters by digitizing the paper trail of a company, right? So when you want to make a deal, when you want to sign a deal, what do you need? You need a contract. What do you need in a contract? You need paper, you need to print, you need to have it signed. If you and I had a deal, Johnny, that we needed to execute contractually, what would I have to do now if we didn't have these options? I would have to print it out, I would have to sign it, I would have to mail it to you in Taiwan, and then you would have to sign it and mail it back to me here in the Philippines. How many days would that take? If we're lucky, 5 days, 1 week, just for your signature. But through our solution, we can do that in a matter of seconds. So as you can imagine, that speed things up quite drastically already. That alone is, I think, quite valuable. The time you save with the digital process. But beyond this, we can also go more social, I think, or more environmental, and we can think about the impact of paper. Paper is one of the biggest additions to anyone's carbon footprint. Just so you know, and this might be a little bit of a plug for my product as well. On average, we did a study for a small business in the Philippines that still uses paper. It costs that company around 85,000 pesos a year per employee to have a paper-based business. Why does it cost so much? Because you have to buy the paper, you have to buy your printers, you have to buy the ink, you have to reload the ink, you have to find storage. So if you're renting a space, more often than not, you're not even thinking about where you're putting your paper, no? But if you're renting a 100 square meter office and it's, let's say, 100,000 pesos your rent, so that's 1,000 pesos per square meter. And let's say your storage area is 10 square meters. So just to keep your documents, you're spending 10,000 pesos a month, which could go somewhere else. With a digital platform like UNAWA, all of that is removed. Let's break it down. If it's 85,000 pesos per person for 1 year with a paper business, on UNAWA, it comes out to about you can drop that cost down to 13,000 pesos a year with one of our top tier plans already. And so with that alone, the benefit is great. If you can imagine, if your business is quite old already, or that if you're around for a few years, your documents are going to pile up. Can you imagine kung parang sasabihin ng boss mo, can you please look up the contract from 2008? 2008, wow, that's 14 years ago. Feeling ko parang 2 years ago lang 2008.
Hanapin yung folder noong 2008.
Oh, 2008, you'll find that. We did that. It takes about 2 hours to locate a physical document. With a digital system, you just type 2008 contract A, you have it. So the amount of time you save and the amount of time you can give back to your employee to do other work or to take care of themselves, which we find very important also, is really invaluable. It's worth more than the financial component we put to our product.
And now that I think of it, actually, like in a bit medyo philosophical point of view, no? Parang it's space and time that we're saving here. Parang yung the physical space, kumbaga into the digital space, mas madaling mag-navigate sa digital space, and I think that's the value that UNAWA is bringing into the space. I want to ask about the legalities kasi I think some of the SMEs, some businesses, parang mas comfortable sila doing paperwork kasi parang andyan nakikita, and then and the legalities of it are mas madaling mag-grasp, kumbaga. Does it necessarily parang translate ba to the digital space? Kumbaga yung legalities ba na required in the physical papers, in the physical transactions, yun din ba yung same legalities sa may digital transactions, or are they different?
Well, there are some similarities and there are some differences. So for the most part, not every document can be signed digitally or electronically here in the Philippines at the moment. Right. We are here at UNAWA. We are part of the group that's pushing to change this paradigm, to change the system. Right. So, for currently in the Philippines, there are some documents that need to be notarized, and there are documents that don't need to be notarized. Essentially, if you need a document to be notarized, you still need to follow the manual process. You need to print it out. You need to put your wet signature, and you need to properly appear before a notary. Wag yung padala-padala lang, because that can haunt you, especially if that's an important document. So notarization is very important. Just for your podcast listeners or viewers out there, basically notarization, simply put, it turns a private document into a public document. That's the point of notarization. But if you think about it, how many of your documents in your business workflow really need to be private documents? Do really need to be public documents? Not all. So not everything needs to be notarized. So those that don't need to be notarized, you can stand to benefit from having it just digitally signed, digitally stored, and everything else.
Speaking of this notarization, I really like that definition. It's the first time I've heard that. It's I'm very fortunate to have learned that from you na it's actually making the private document a public document. I really think
Mm-hmm.
that's a definition that many people should actually learn and really grasp. But UNAWA has a product, RNotary or remote notary. So can we know more about this?
Sure.
I really think it's very useful and very valuable kasi like now nga and nagkaroon ng pandemic no and actually until now meron pa rin madami pa rin cases. So can you share more about this remote notarization services ng UNAWA?
Okay, so remote notarization is as it sounds. It allows for notarization without you having to physically appear before a notary. The Supreme Court rules of notarization require just that. Na you have to appear before the notary, physically appear before the notary, and attest and sign that document and say that this is me confirming my participation, my action into this document. If I may kind of break topic a little bit for your viewers, I'd like to say that it's very important to notarize properly. I know, and I don't mean any disrespect, that there are a lot of notaries out there that don't necessarily follow the process. There are a lot of people who most likely, yung padala, yung pinapadala lang yung ID at yung document, pinapanotaryo. As a lawyer who used to be in litigation, I'd like to say that that in itself poses some risks. Back when I was litigating, that's what I would used to do when I had doubts about the document. I would, during my cross-examination, for example, I would surprise the witness and I would ask them, where was the notary located? Can you tell me about the office? Can you describe the office? What was the notary wearing? And oftentimes they would have a stunned face. They wouldn't be able to answer. And then, what do I do next? I would say, like, Your Honor, it's clear that this person did not go to a notary. I would like to have this document invalidated, and that alone could really make or break a case. So for anyone out there, please notarize properly, no matter how insignificant it is, you think, no matter, even if it's probably more expensive to have it notarized properly. Please take the extra cost, especially if it's an important document, because notarization is quite important.
Yeah, but so if in UNAWA, how do you do remote notary? So is it in Zoom?
Okay. Yes, no, it's not in Zoom. So with remote notarization, we've from what I can from what I know so far, we are one of the only companies that follow the Supreme Court's rules on remote notarization to the T.
Okay.
So what it does, it's still a very manual process, unfortunately, wherein you have to print out your document, you have to record yourself signing the document every page, and then you have to record yourself sealing that document. And then once that's all done, by the way, this is all given to you in the instructions of RNotary. You set a schedule with one of the partner notaries within the platform, and then the platform will also schedule a pickup of the document. So what will happen is, after I record myself filming, or let's say I'm your notary, after you record yourself filming that document, a courier from UNAWA will pick up that document, send it to the notary. You have a predetermined meeting time. So let's say you and I are scheduled to meet tomorrow at 4:00. The notary will open the document in front of you, look at it, ask a few questions, validate the authenticity of it, and then notarize it, and then send it back to you. Especially during the pandemic, you can imagine how useful a product like that would be when we weren't allowed to leave our homes, when we weren't allowed to go outside, essentially for the safety of our own safety and also for the safety of the notaries. A product like this exists. But as I mentioned, we are in a digital world now. UNAWA is at the forefront. We are pushing for the approval and the passing of the electronic notarization law, where you no longer have to physically sign a document, and doing it online again, still recorded, still Zoom like this. It will be very similar to what we're doing, but the difference is we have a document in front of us, and then that document will be notarized, whether it is with our notary or the eventual e-notary. You can imagine the speed at which business will flow.
And it's amazing how you explain that. That's actually what I'm talking about, no? Like the physical space and the digital space. Kasi maybe iba nga yung parang legal requirements in the physical space and iba yung sa digital space. Pero seeing now, like with UNAWA, kumbaga na-plansya nyo na yung operations, na-plansya nyo yung step-by-step na gagawin such that laging compliant sa Supreme Court law yung kumbaga yung bawat legal step na ito-take ng isang SME and ito-take any business basically and ito-take rin ng UNAWA on its part.
Absolutely,
Unawa,
with the Supreme Court rules, actually, not the Supreme Court law. We
sorry.
follow that. No, please don't apologize. Between the rules of notarization and digital signing, there are a lot of rules to follow. If you'd like, I can explain the difference between the components of an electronic signature and why you need a platform like UNAWA, for example.
Yeah.
Um, shall I?
Yeah, let's go. Let's go.
Okay.
Actually, it's another product of UNAWA. The UNAWA SignSecure is the legal
Yes, it is.
signature. Yeah, so
SignSecure. Yes,
let's talk about that.
it's one of our flagship products for the time being. It's UNAWA SignSecure. It is a way to electronically sign a document with legally binding effect and legal validity. Right. So, why do I say it like that? So, a contract is any agreement between two people. Um, you and I can sign a contract, and then you can you can attest your consent to it by putting your thumb on it, putting your X marks the spot sort of thing. That would be valid between us. But from a digital perspective, it's harder to prove. So while some people can say, kaya pa naman i-insert yung signature ko sa
Yeah.
Microsoft Word, diba? Which is true, you can
Yeah,
do
yeah.
that. But while that is technically legal, it might not be enforceable. And what we want to really focus on is the enforceability of our documents. So when you want to have a digital signature or an electronic signature platform, there are a few things you must take into account. Particularly one, you have to have an agreement that you are signing electronically. You have the option to reject or sign the document. And then after which, the most important thing is your signature has to be attached to your identity, whether that's your email address, your phone number, or at a higher level through EKYC components, for example, which we do offer as well. We need to attach that there, because at the end of it all, the platform will create a digital manifest. For the lack of a better word, the digital manifest is a global standard that showcases that when the parties signed it, that makes sure the parties did sign it at the time they did say it, and then that adds an element of non-repudiation. Basically, that says that you can't say na hindi ko sinign yan. Kasi with Microsoft Word, for example, I can easily say na I wasn't the one who uploaded my signature
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
That was someone else. But with a platform like ours, that's secure. And beyond that, we have other security measures to also make sure that the contract, the document, or whatever you sign is valid and not forged, not out of consent or anything like that.
Is it right? Tama ba yung understanding ko na those signatures are actually parang may registration sila in UNAWA's database? Parang ganun ba? Such that madaling ma-verify for any document if this signature is valid. Because ayun nga, I mean, in MS Word or in PDFs actually, you can basically put anyone's signature if you want. You can just
Exactly.
copy and even with forgery, di ba? May ganung risks na. So parang actually may verify ng UNAWA na that signature actually is kumbaga done by that person at that date and time. So yeah.
So that's why you have to register with our system, right? So when you sign on to UNAWA, you create your account, you verify your account, just like with every other platform, be it Facebook, Twitter. There are ways of validating your identity. And on UNAWA SignSecure, we have several methods of affixing your electronic signature. One is you can upload a PDF of your signature. As I said, that's done on Microsoft Word. But to make sure it's really me uploading it, for us to allow you to upload the signature onto UNAWA, you have to register your phone number and you'll be sent a one-time PIN, an OTP, so that we know we can attach this action to you. So if anything goes down and you say, I didn't sign that, we can say, no, you authorized it through your phone number, you authorized it through your email address. That's the uploading. But we can also have mechanisms of physical signing, using a re-uploaded signature, or even typing your signature. These are all legal and valid ways of manifesting your consent to a document. And what that does is that will really plug you into that document, to the contract. And as I said, it will create a digital manifest showing where you were when you signed it, what time you signed it, so that you can't really go against it. And beyond this, we add an extra security component that once all parties to a document have signed, or if there's only one party, once the document has been completed, the system will automatically put a QR code on the document along with its manifest. The reason for the QR code is very simple. It's a second step to make sure that there is no forgery. We are in the digital space, as you know. So let's say I have a contract with you, I send it to you via email, or I print it out for my records for whatever reason. Which again, stop doing that. Stop printing. Let's save the trees. But should someone print it out, we know that a lot of things can be edited, right? Especially digital matters that can be edited. Someone who is relatively skilled in Photoshop can change 1,000 pesos to 1 million pesos, and they'll say, "Hoy, yung signature mo nandyan pa. Sign mo yan, diba? UNAWA yan." And I'll go, "Yeah, that's UNAWA, but I didn't put 1 million pesos. I put 100,000 pesos." No, no, no. The contract says 1 million. If you sign the QR code, I'm sorry, if you scan the QR code, the system will generate the original document against the platform. So all you have to do is a visual comparison and say, "Hey, the one online is not repudiatable. The physical one is evidently a forgery." So you give you that extra component of protection. That's harder to prove with a physical document.
Yeah, actually walang ganun sa physical papers, no, kasi
Wala, diba?
and with that you can really catch someone if he or she is doing forgery.
Yes, absolutely. That's what we try to do. We try to make sure that it is new. The digital space is very new, and as you mentioned earlier, a lot of people are still just getting on the bandwagon, trusting the digital space. If I may give an example from a talk I attended very recently, a very good bit of data that was shared with me by the managing partner of Foxmont Partners, Franco Verona. I found this very interesting. Just to showcase the adoption of technology in the Philippines. He mentioned something like, prior to the pandemic, 20% of the adult population of the Philippines was on GCash, right? So 20% of the adult population was on GCash. That shows you that only 20% of the people really trust these digital offerings, these digital solutions. That 20% jumped to 80% during the pandemic. So from 20 to 80% of the adult population now is a member of GCash, for example. So congratulations, GCash, good job. But it goes to show that there is a time element before people really trust a digital program, a digital platform. So we, in our case, after how many years of people using paper, it's hard to convince them to shift over to a more digital mechanism. And we want to make sure we establish components that will allow them to really know that they're safe and their transactions are valid and legally binding.
Actually, kumbaga somehow na-force magtiwala yung mga tao sa digital, sa that kind of transaction, digital wallet, and even with digital transactions. I mean, kasi because of the pandemic, so parang we have no choice but to trust this kind of systems. So and eventually those systems will help us din na parang really for us to use smoothly those kind of operations, this kind of transactions.
Not to disagree with you, Johnny. I don't think people don't have a choice. Ultimately, of course, you still have a choice to use physical paper, but at the end, in my very, very humble opinion, I think it's not a matter of not having a choice, but there is a better choice, and the digital way is actually the better choice. I think.
The pandemic allowed the people to know the better choice. Maybe.
Yes,
I mean, on that
there are better options. There are better ways of doing things.
Yeah, speaking of this, let's talk about the other product. The other, I think it's another flagship product na UNAWA, the SafeForm. I think this is the most how you digitize forms and how you automate workflows. Because I think it's very kumbaga smooth na parang you really help an SME digitize and automate all their work or a very big chunk of their workflow. So can you know more lang about this and parang kumbaga how can a business really use this product maybe?
Sure. Again, as I mentioned, the one of the main components is we're trying to eliminate the use case of paper, right? And part of that is to automate forms. With no matter what business you're in, you're always going to have some sort of document trail, some sort of form that you use on a daily basis. And how does that work? You currently use either, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to mention brands, but you currently use Microsoft Word or Google Drive, or you know what I mean? You use other products to type up your document. And you have to create them from scratch for the most part, most of the time. Or you have templates, right? So you will just leave blanks that you tend to fill out. But more often than not, you will find that there were portions that you forgot to fill up. There were portions you forgot to change. For example, in our own little environment, when we send out a job offer, so for the most part, our job offers are generally the same. You change the addressee, you change the title, the job description, but sometimes you'll forget to change the position. So I am sending out a job offer to a marketing officer, but it still says developer. Parang nakakahiya, diba? But so when you have a system like SafeForm, it makes sure that all of the elements of your document are being extracted properly. All of the things you need to include in your document are already stationed and put there efficiently and in a timely manner, so that you don't have to waste your time reviewing something you do on a daily basis. Because I'm sure you and myself included, when you do something so regularly, you kind of tend to get careless. Na parang pinapabilisan mo na lang, in the sense that you just go through it. SafeForm will digitize that process for you and eliminate the human error component by making your forms more subject to our AI or our machine learning elements.
And I think that's especially for scaling organizations, kasi different
Absolutely.
departments, different people, and everything will just change, no? So the positions will just change, and then the people will just maybe change positions. So maybe that, like, this kind of automation can really help smoothen out and reduce those kind of risks. But can we know lang parang in a business ba? I mean, in a business, parang what's the range of paperwork and operations that UNAWA can help digitize? Kumbaga, HR, accounting. I mean, what kind
Everything.
of everything?
Everything. Anything that can be done on paper can be done on UNAWA. Whether it needs to be a wet signature or an electronic signature, we can do it. Again, let's go back a bit. It only needs to be a wet signature if it needs notarization. SafeForm can still give you that. You can process the entire document through SafeForm, and then instead of going to SignSecure after, what you do is you print it out, and instead you go to RNotary. But if you don't need notarization, after SafeForm, you go to SignSecure, you sign it, and then your workflow is finished. You don't need to grab it anymore. You don't. Oops, sorry, am I allowed to mention that? You don't need to have it delivered by a courier. You can have it done instantly. You don't need to remind people to sign. Can you imagine certain documents, like in our field or in the business, in like the legal aspect, with the bigger businesses, when they have when they have a board of 10 members, and especially during the pandemic, the board members don't tend to meet in one boardroom anymore. They're all over. To sign one document, it can take up to 3 weeks sometimes. And can you imagine the delay that will cause your business, just because you're routing one piece of paper to so many people just for their signature, when they can already manifest their consent online with legal binding effect, I might add. Yeah, so any business really can benefit from this.
Yeah, so I think ganun, kumbaga nagkasama-sama yung different products, no, of UNAWA. And actually those 3 weeks nga, you can really convert that into maybe just like 3 seconds. I think ang overarching theme really of what UNAWA is doing is the digitization of businesses, or digitization of Philippine SMEs especially. Can you know really, like, ano ba yung vision ng UNAWA? I mean, how does UNAWA really want to change, kumbaga, how business is being done, and maybe the society? Parang what's the future that we want to see really with UNAWA? And maybe you can share your, kumbaga, your perspectives and your visions about the future with UNAWA.
Oh, parang that's a very good question, Johnny.
And this is our ending question.
Vision,
yeah, so I wanted to make it like a very grand question.
Thank you. Again, thank you for allowing me on your show, no? But to answer that question, I think it's quite simple. We do want to help the Philippine economy and the Philippine businesses, whether they're the small micro enterprise or the larger scale businesses. Anyone can benefit from a paperless economy. Whether you're a freelancer looking to get certain things done, the digital aspect of what we do will really help matters move forward. One, it saves time, which is a very valuable commodity people tend to overlook. Two, it saves resources, both money, very important nowadays with any small business. You want to save money. As I said, on average, you are spending close to 100,000 pesos a year just to print your documents and just to handle physical documents, when you can drop that by close to 90% by digitizing that. and effectively, and I don't mean to sound corny, but I really do believe in this. Um, Unawa would also like to. Our product is also a way to help the environment, to lower our country's carbon footprint. I can only speculate for with what I'm about to say, but if you look at the plans of the new administration, for example, you'll notice that they have plans, and they laid out by 2025. It seems like they're going to be implementing a carbon tax or some carbon crediting rule. I can only speculate here, but if we look at other jurisdictions globally, what are carbon credits and what are carbon taxes is they set a benchmark, they set a threshold of your carbon footprint. If you exceed it, you pay a tax. If you go below it, you save. You have some carbon credits. I don't know if that's what we're going to do here, but eventually we will have that kind of mechanism. And let's say they say 2025, you have to lower your carbon footprint to this much. The easiest way to lower your carbon footprint is to lower your dependency on paper. But it's not that easy to lower your dependency on paper. For example, unfortunately, this data is out of the US, okay? But for a law firm in the United States, a mid-sized law firm, say 15 to 20 people, it will take them more than 1 year to fully go paperless. So you can imagine with the larger enterprises here in the Philippines, it could take a lot of time. And as the saying is, time is money. And we want to really make sure that the local businesses here put their money towards what is really important. Saving their time and allocating it to other things.
Yeah, and maybe being digital is the only way in the future.
Absolutely, I think so. No, everything we do now is digital. The actually one of the last remaining aspects of the non-digital economy is paper. I mean,
Yeah. Actually,
as I mentioned,
now
go
that I think
ahead,
of it,
Johnny. Excuse me.
now that I think of it, why are we using paper?
Exactly. Why are we using paper? No, like imagine all of these notarized documents over the years. How many warehouses
Yeah, exactly.
are storing documents? Like imagine if you need to pull up a document for your court case that's 20 years old, malamang naanay na yon or nabaha yung warehouse or something, or
Actually,
anything can happen to a paper document, and you can lose a paper document, and you know how hard it is to retrieve certain documents naman, no? As I said, it takes an employee about 2 hours in a week. So you spend 2 hours of their week looking for documents when that can be turned into seconds. What more on the grand scale of giant enterprises of the government, of the BIR, of the registers of deeds of the multiple provinces, diba? Parang there's really a much easier way to do things, and we want to put that forward. We want to help make things easier. And digitizing, we believe, is the best way to do that.
yeah, siguro maybe ang ending question natin for our listeners, especially those who have their own businesses. Bakit nga ba tayo gumagamit ng paper when we can do digital?
The simple answer is before is because that was the practice.
Yeah.
That's what the rules called for. However, the rules are now modernizing. We do have the rules on electronic evidence, for example. We have the rules on electronic signatures and whatnot. So the regulators and the legislators are aware of the things are changing, and we just need to catch up with the rest of that. So we just have to pass on that information that it's not necessary anymore. It's just like telling, sorry for the example, parang, but when I told my lola about GCash, she couldn't understand it. Parang, paano ako magbabayad kung wala akong pera?
Yeah.
Wala, GCash. That's just GCash. And that's as simple as that. Yung 100 pesos mo na paper is digitized by GCash, but they have the same effect.
Yeah.
So that's what we're trying to do. Your contract that's printed on bond paper has the same effect that would be on your tablet, desktop, or phone. And that extra convenience, no? For example, I have to sign a document, pero I'm in traffic. I can do that now. I'm in another country. I can do that now. But before, I would have to wait to get to my office. I would have to wait for the document to be delivered. Now it's really much easier, and I can focus on other things. And that's our goal. We want people to focus on other things also, to focus on more important matters, not things so trivial as nasa na yung kontrata, nasign na ba nito, nasign na ba niya, none of that, man, to eliminate that level of stress.
Yeah, maybe it's those biases, no, to those traditional systems that somehow it's kind of a restriction pa nga, naging restriction now when we think of it. Really, being digital really introduces us to many more opportunities. Maybe we can scale, we can globalize, and we can do much more for our business and actually for our daily lives. Yeah, so I think
Absolutely.
yeah. So maraming salamat, Attorney Gino. This is a very wonderful conversation. I really
Thank you,
appreciate
Johnny. It's very nice
I really
of
appreciate
you.
that level of wisdom of you sharing really those different
that's a
aspects, those
that's a
different
strong word to
views.
use, wisdom, but I appreciate it.
Those, I mean, it's really very great now to hear about this new kumbaga perspective of having everything digital. So can you just invite Attorney Gino, our listeners, maybe they have their own businesses, their own SMEs, and they want to avail or to be partners maybe with UNAWA. So maybe can you just invite them maybe to your website, to your social media channels.
Wow, this is one of those share, subscribe moments. So I've never had to do a plug before. But yes, please, no. For what it's worth, for everyone listening to Johnny's show, please visit unawa.asia. You will see that SignSecure, for example, there are many tiers available. In fact, we do have a plan that's free forever. You can use SignSecure without ever having to pay. But of course, there are limits. What we do is we offer you 5 documents a month for free for eternity. So every month you have 5 documents that you can have signed out to our platform. But if your business needs more than that, you can scale up to our next tier, the personal tier rather. I think that's at 450 pesos a month or 4,500 pesos a year. Or you can go all the way up to the business plan, which is 13,500 pesos a year. Again, if we go back to the cost of that versus paper, 13,000 pesos to be able to sign, store, and validate your documents versus close to 100,000 just to print and pay for paper. For me, I think it's a no-brainer, and it's a way to show that the Philippines and your company is really taking steps to modernize and to compete at the global level.
Yeah, amazing. Maraming salamat, Attorney Gino. This is really wonderful.
Maraming salamat din, Johnny.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very nice meeting you, and more power to your show. Thank you so much for having us.
Salamat.
Again, yun, unawa.asia. Saan na ba yun? Visit lang, please.
Thank you very much to our 21 patrons. AskLexPH is our official e-learning partner. Get 5% discount on e-learning courses and certification programs on Lean Six Sigma, project management, data science, and many more using our promo code ALPHAXSUP. This episode is super powered by NutriCoach, the all-in-one productivity tool for dietitians and nutritionists. Looking for buy and sell online with Sigurado sellers. Benjoy's Food Products, the home of premium bacon ends, tapa, and tocino. And 8chain, an 8-in-1 cryptocurrency project building one chain at a time, starting with max rep, workout, and earn. This episode is powered by ePlayment, Interleukin, and ROC.ph. Support us at www.patreon.com/startuppodcastph.